Hi, I'm Marc Sumner, CEO and founder of Robertson Sumner. Welcome to the Channel Chat podcast, where we will share learnings, best practices and failures with some of the biggest names in the IT industry, all with the simple aim of being the go-to place for IT sales professionals and managers to learn from others with the ultimate goal of maximising performance and growing the channel. Hello, I'm Marc Sumner, host of the Channel Chat podcast show, and today I have Kieran Wood from Cloud Business in the house.
Hello.
How are you doing?
Yeah, good. You?
Yeah, very good, very good, very good, very good. So, Kieran, you are the first £1 million biller I've had on the show. So I really want to drill down on some advice that you can give young or experienced reseller candidates in the market that really want to get to that sort of level. But first of all, I do want to sort of start off actually how you actually got into IT. So what was your first job you actually got into IT in?
So actually when I left school, so I was talking to you about this earlier, I feel like a bit of an industry veteran, although I'm fairly young in comparison, so I'm 37 years old. So literally as soon as I left school, I actually got into a business called Global Communications, selling IT training, really. So back in the day, 20 years ago, it was literally discs, software on a disc, which was your Microsoft MCSE type training. So that's how I started.
And you just post them out to them, would you?
Literally, yeah. So there was a website, and you'd be cold calling businesses, and you'd be cold calling the heads of IT, etc. And they obviously they've got their team of professionals, and it was literally posting out discs to people. And then as technology moved on, it was download links and all that sort of stuff. So,
yeah. How long did you do that for?
2 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that in like internal sales?
Internal sales, yeah. It was all very much internal sales, telephone bashing, smile and dial, the historical telesales role, pure telesales role. Yeah. And before that, I'd done some very basic telesales for the Surrey Advertiser. I live in Guildford in Surrey, and that was literally people calling in or you're calling out and you're trying to sell advertising space for the local rag. But 1 minute you could be trying to advertise to a car dealership, and then the next phone call could be someone who's old Doris, Auntie Doris, who's trying to sell her £3 budgie. It could be that.
It literally is
that.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Okay.
It could be a 10x10 space in a paper for 500 quid, or Auntie Doris selling her budgie for £3.
And was this all new business? You started literally cold calling?
Pure new business.
Yeah. And how did you find that, being a young guy at
I think like a lot of teenagers, you get a bit bolshy and I think sometimes you think the world owes you something, so you've got something a little bit to prove. So you go out there and you just, you get a lot of knockbacks. You get a hell of a lot of knockbacks. And I think some people coming into the industry now, that maybe they've been brought up, maybe private education, they were sometimes not handed on a plate, but things don't always come easy. It is hard work, and you've got to put in that graft in the early stages. So some people say to me, "Oh, Kieran, you've done really well, blah blah blah." And I've been with my current employer. I'm an integral part of the business, Cloud Business, formerly Land to Land, but I've been with them for 16, 17 years. And I think it's longevity as well, longevity in a business.
Okay, so let's move on to Land to Land. So how did you get the job there?
So Land to Land, back in 2003, Pankaj Vekria, who's the commercial director at the time, and Gary Duke, sales director, they interviewed me, and it was just purely by chance. I started looking at, when I was at Global Communications, I looked around and I wanted a sales role for an IT business, field sales role for an IT business.
How old are you then going into this?
18.
Okay, so still pretty,
very
young to try and get a field sales role. And you just got a license, haven't you?
Yeah. Literally, I'm one of these people. As soon as I was 17, within 2 weeks, I'd passed my driving test. I was very methodical. Right? So literally, as soon as I can, that's what I want to do. So I reached 18. I found an opportunity at Land to Land. In fact, one of the guys I work with at Global Communications, a guy called Sarge Masood, he went to work for Land to Land. Real big character. He was working at Land to Land. So I looked at Land to Land on the internet, advertising for a field sales guy. So I went for the interview, sat down with Gary and Pankaj, had a really good interview. And afterwards, they asked me how old I was. And I think they were a bit shocked when I said, look, I'm 18. And because my parents, they thought I was maybe 25, 26. Well, I think at the time they wanted someone who was maybe a bit more senior, maybe 35, 40, who was going to go out and sell to enterprise customers. But Pankaj really liked what I was doing. So very briefly, for sort of 6 months, I went to work for a company called Flexia and then Capital Technology, all part of the same group, essentially selling IT leasing, so business-to-business leasing. And then Pankaj rang me up and sort of said, look, we've been thinking about you since your interview. We really want you to come to LAN. Would you maybe join us as a resourcer? And I thought, what's this? What do you mean resourcer? I don't know what you mean by resourcer. And he said, well, recruitment. And I thought, yeah, fine. IT recruitment, I can do that. Anyone can do that, right?
No.
No?
No, they can't.
So
hard job.
Yeah, really hard job. So I went in, I worked, I joined LAN as a resourcer in the LAN recruitment team, if you like, which was run by a guy called Rob DeVizio, the mad Italian, as he was known, a real big character. So I was doing resourcing, Rob was sort of doing the deals, and then I was then finding the candidates. And then I started doing some of the deals and finding the candidates, managing the whole process. And then I could sort of, out the corner of my eye, see the corporate sales team in their flashy cars and all that sort of stuff. And being young and entrepreneurial, I just thought I wanted to be part of that. So I said to Pankaj, look, I want to go into junior sales. And he said, well, we haven't really got a role for you. And I said, well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll start cold calling for the sales team and booking them appointments. And, can we do a commission plan where maybe I get, if I book appointments, I get some money for it.
So you almost wrote your own job spec?
Yeah, in that respect, yeah. They
didn't have anyone doing that before?
Not at the time, no. So Pankaj and Gary were very much on board with it. They gave me the opportunity, which was fantastic. So I started booking appointments for the sales guys. So at the time, there was a guy called Steve Whiter. He was a really good friend of mine. So he was the sales manager, Phil Stanley, some of the guys. And I started booking appointments for the senior sales guys, the people that I really looked up to. Charlie Foster. And I started booking appointments for them. And I was targeted, how many appointments I could book per day, per week.
Was that hard booking appointments? Did you, because you were still quite a young age, did you have the credibility to sort of calling these customers, enterprise customers?
I think, but nice on the phone.
Yeah.
They don't know, what type of environment. I've always been very professional and ethical the way I come across to people. So they didn't know that I was an 18-year-old. But the heritage of the business and LAN and what we do, the credibility speaks. And we had lots of referrals and case studies. So I think calling people with a value proposition at the time and saying what we can do, bring value to their business and their operations it wasn't an easy job, certainly, but you have to pick your fights.
And was it obviously cold calling, was it Yellow Pages sort of stuff? Was it?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, literally Yellow Pages. We'd buy in marketing lists and all that sort of stuff, which this day and age, with GDPR, etc., that's extremely difficult, but ultimately it's still a case of FaceTime with people, which may be LinkedIn initially and then a telephone call. So there is, you can't say cold calling's dead, but I think it's very much governed now.
Yeah, calling's not dead, is it? That's
calling. I mean, communication is the key, right?
Yeah.
Between everyone, calling's certainly not dead, but gone are the days where you could probably still make, we call it smile and dial. So 100 calls a day, you might get to, if you're lucky, you might speak to 10 people. If you're lucky, if you're really lucky.
Yeah, we'd have it where, going back 15 years ago, the whole opportunity was to, if you can get through to 7 decision makers in a day, that was the key. We're 7 people. The
problem is with decision makers now, the secretary could think that she's a decision maker, and she might well be if she's she's got the ear of the MD, and she's got access to that person's diary. Maybe that secretary has to be your best mate for 2 weeks while you prospect.
What was it? What I found interesting is in I say the old days, but so 10 or 15 years ago, where the decision maker was normally just one person, like the IT manager, etc. Nowadays, when you're doing a big deal, maybe like £1 million deal, etc., there seems to be sort of 5, 6, 7 people in the decision making process.
Absolutely. I
so
mean,
that's making it more complicated, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's down to the salesperson as well to identify who those decision makers are in that process, and it is really difficult, especially if it's a new customer that you've not worked with in the past. So having the head of IT, he's just one person in the chain. Ultimately, they all report to someone who signs off the check at the end of the day. There's a head of finance, there's procurement, there's maybe a technical architect involved somewhere. There's lots, as you say, 5, 6, 7 people in a room which are going to be making a decision.
How do you juggle that, the communication between those sort of different 7 people?
I think you have to find who's going to be the alpha in that group, who ultimately holds the responsibility. And you have to play to their strengths as well. So you have to look at who in that room is going to be making that decision, who in that room, do they already have relationships? Has the head of marketing, and this is maybe a Wi-Fi solution where RFID tagging and location tracking, etc., in stores, retail outfits, the marketing manager may already have a relationship with someone who already does that. So you need to try and identify that at an early stage. Otherwise, you could just be absolutely wasting your time. And that's really key. Yeah, and that's a difficult thing. And I think that takes time to learn as well. Any new salesperson coming into the industry, we said this earlier on, longevity. So I've been at land to land, now cloud business for sort of 17, 18 years. And I've been
a long time. It's a long time, isn't it?
Long time. But then I said this to you earlier on as well. I've seen people in the industry that I've known for a long, long time, and they might say, "Oh, Kieran, you've been really successful. What is it?" And I say, "Well, you've had a job every 2 years. I've stayed in one job for 16, 17 years. If you're trying to build credibility with a customer, you ring them up and you say, 'Hi, Joe Blogs. Yeah, it's Kieran at Land to Land, and I'm selling XYZ, and it's the best thing since sliced bread.' And then 18 months down the line, you're then ringing them up again and saying, 'Oh, I was selling you that best thing since sliced bread. I've now got something which is even better, but I work for a different company.' You're losing credibility with that customer. Yeah. And I don't think a lot of people see that.
Do you think people go for the sort of like the short-term wins? So they go into a company, they start being a bit successful, and they say, "Well, something else is nice and shiny." They're going to jump ship for another role.
Yeah, absolutely. Sometimes they're a bit naive. "Oh, I'll get 10 grand more in my basic salary." But long term, what is that going to do? So 10 grand, but maybe they don't see, maybe they're not billing margin, therefore they're not earning commission. So 10 grand in the early stages to them is a big win. But actually, if they stay where they are and build their credibility with their customer base and start billing, then suddenly their earnings will massively overtake.
And just on that, what bit of advice would you give to a young apprentice, graduate, or someone coming in industry who wants to make a name for themselves in reseller land, but they're not patient? What would you say to them? Be patient, but
yeah, be patient. I mean, egos don't do anything in the industry. I think if you come in and you walk around with an ego, thinking that you're the next big thing, people will see straight through that. They won't want to help you. You need to be, empathetic to people. You need to. At the end of the day, I think I'm not very academic, but I am a bit of a sponge. So I try and take in as much information as possible. And I said to you this earlier on when we had a chat. I remember my dad, when I was growing up, said on my school reports, could always do better. And the teacher would always say, if there was a classroom full of kids, Kieran would be the only child in the class that knew that a red car had driven past the classroom. And I think I've always been a bit like that. So I'm always, yes, there's this opportunity here, but I may be thinking of what else are they talking about? Is there another opportunity here that maybe we've not even spotted yet, and all that sort of thing. So I think it's a case of juggling many different plates.
So you were making appointments for the field sales guys.
Yeah. So
how long did you do that for?
So I was doing that for about 18 months. And then it got to the point where I was making appointments for field sales guys, and then it was a case of, right, I'm handing over the opportunity to them, and they're doing what they're doing with them. I need to take it to the next step. I need to show my own and demonstrate my own entrepreneurial flair. So I'm now coming out with you. So you're a sales guy. Mark, here you go. Here's an opportunity. I'm going to come with you. And if we close that, we're going to split it 50-50. Oh,
you said this.
Yeah. So we're going to split it 50-50 or 70-30, depending on how much work you've done. And the sales guy might look at you and go, but I'm bringing you an opportunity that you wouldn't have ordinarily had. So if we work on it, we close it, we split the margin, yeah? So we done that for a period of time, for probably another year, 2 years. And then it was a case, I feel like I've earned my stripes and I've got the ability and picked up some expertise now in going to meetings, how to conduct a meeting, so on and so forth. And then it was a case of sort of, dip my toe in the water. And
how did you get that expertise? Was it going out with the sales guys themselves? How if you were
going out with the sales guys?
Is that the best way to learn on the job?
Absolutely. And
because there's only so much there's only so much classroom training you can do.
This is what I'm saying. I'm not an academic person. You can't. To be successful in sales, you can't just read a book and then go, "Oh, I'm going to be really good at sales." And it's also, if someone says, "Oh, I need a proposal for a managed support services agreement," well, where do I start? I need to learn off someone. I need to learn how to write a management summary, an executive summary. How do I do a conclusion to a proposal? How do I put together the investment summary? So you need to learn these things. And then, so I started doing that over a period of years, and then it was just natural really to then go, I don't need you guys anymore. I'm giving up 50% of my margin, if you like, to you. I now want 100% of that margin.
I bet you weren't popular then when you said that. You're not going to do the appointments anymore. You were probably a good thing for them.
Well, the idea is obviously we try and replicate that as a success to get other salespeople in the, junior type salespeople in the business, and that's what we done. So then it just grew, and then so I went from sales, senior sales, assistant sales manager. Then to sales manager, so it's a little bit like working at Tesco's assistant sales manager. And
so when you were doing sort of starting into sales, what sort of level of GP were you doing when you started?
25k GP a month.
Which is even impressive now for people. So let alone being £1 million bill. So how did you? What sort of customers were you sort of dealing with? Types of customers?
I mean, I've got customers literally from 10 users up to 10,000 users. And I think as well, some people come in and they go, we really want to focus on the Fortune 500 or the FTSE 250. That's great aspirational, but what you do so need to understand is that they've got 6 to 9 month sales cycles. You're probably not on their PSL, their preferred supplier list. You've probably got no engagement with them. Everyone and their uncle's also after that bit of business. So you're suddenly a very small fish in a very big pond. Everyone likes to have the Coca-Cola type branding on their reference sites, but actually selling to these type of people is very, very difficult and very time consuming. And I think you could spend a lot of your time doing that for very little return. Yeah,
so there's a lot of people out there that are selling to enterprise customers, and the sales cycle 6 to 9 months, and then they've been there 9 months and they still haven't sold anything.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
So you've got to have those quick wins as well. So there's a bit of a both.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think one of land to land's, I say land to land, but because I've been there a long time. Cloud Business's value propositions is that we're agile as a business, so we're able to scale up and scale back very, very efficiently with our customers. So, like I say, I've got customers who are 10 people, small accountancy firm, up to 10,000 people.
Okay, so let's move on to obviously then to senior sales, then to assistant sales manager. Was assistant sales manager, was that your first step into managing anyone?
Yeah, absolutely. So I was deputising for who was the sales manager then. So there were certain tasks that I was doing, like forecasting, reporting, and all that sort of stuff. Maybe hosting some of the vendor meetings or the sales meetings, etc. And then the opportunity arose to step into the sales management shoes, which I took to. And then it was a case of being the recruiting manager, the training manager, and managing those people. But also, it's difficult as well because I've always been a direct contribution as well.
Yeah, now that's very rare. So you've never not billed every month. You've always had a target on your head.
Yeah. Yeah.
But you've also had the responsibility of managing a sales team as well. So how have you, or what advice would you give? How have you been able to manage and juggle that and not be seen as, actually he's just trying to scope our deals for himself and he's not really interested in us?
I think that's always really difficult when you've got a sales team, especially maybe a young sales team who are coming in and they want to get their feet under the table. It's always very difficult because you're hunter-farmer as well. At the end of the day, Cloud Business or Land to Land at the time, we weren't a business where we've got 300 people where you could have lots of live at different levels of management. So the business needed me to be a contributor, but it also needed me to be a sales manager as well to help manage the sales team. Because you had the directors of the business at the time trying to manage and direct the business as a whole, and they need someone who can manage the sales team because they've been in that sales team, they know the functions, they know how it works.
Do you think if people are, I don't know, I'm not saying specifically you, but do you think if people are paid on their individual number, they're actually bothered about trying to get the sales team and other people get going? Because to me, I'm thinking, whenever companies ask me about how to give commission structures out, and I'll say to them, well, you've got 3 options. Yeah, you've got a billing manager, but the challenge with that is he will always be thinking about his own customers, his own self, because that's what he's paid on.
Yeah.
You'll have a manager that's a bit more statsy driven, or you'll be a manager that's a bit more coach and mentor when he goes out on the deals. But if you don't pay someone on the actual overall number of the team, they won't be helping the team, they'll just be helping themselves. So what's your view on that about
I think
how a sales manager be paid?
Absolutely right. It really depends as a business. If you have a sales manager that is purely paid on the performance of the sales team, not their own direct contribution, then that works. If you have a sales manager who's paid on their own direct contribution to existing accounts that he's already been selling to, and also the performance of the team, that also works. I don't think you have to be very careful. You can't have a sales manager who just sits in the middle and sort of cherry picks opportunities. That can't work.
No, because he's basically lining his own pocket, which any salesperson would do if they were paid on it.
They do, and you know, I'd be foolish to think that people didn't think that I was doing that. But categorically, hand on heart, that would not happen. Ethical, it's just not ethical.
How did you make the transition between being a contributor and then having to have the additional responsibility of managing as well? Because most people...
I think it's just trust, time and trust from the owners of the business at the time. So it's proving my abilities as a salesperson, showing that actually, I mean, I very much care the business that I work for. I treat it as my own. You know, every pound and penny on the table, I fight for it like it's my own. It's not my business. It's not. I say this phrase earlier. It's not my train set, but I treat it very much like that. So I think the guys, the owners of the business, put their trust in me to help manage and run the sales team. That's what I've done. And to the best of my ability.
And so as you were moving up your sales career, what stage did you start getting towards the sort of the 500, the 600, the 700 sort of K level, and then now obviously the £1 million?
Yeah, again, it's just progression over time. You've got customers that you work with. I've got customers that I've been selling to for the last 20 years, and they're still with me now.
You've still got those relationships for 20 years.
Yeah.
Would you think that's the secret to maintaining the relationships over time?
And also I'm one of these people as well. With what we do as a business is very much land and expand. I don't work for a business where all we sell is laptops. So if I'm selling to Joe Blogs Limited and I'm selling laptops, well, once I've sold 50 laptops, the only other opportunity in there is maybe some more laptops later on. But what we do as a business is the hardware, the software, the services, the managed support, the security, the networking. So there's a whole host of services that what we do as a business.
So talk me through this. So if you were given an opportunity or a lead, how would you then or now, how would you actually go about sort of landing and expanding that account or opening up the account? So what would be your sort of your prospecting method?
Yeah. So all the time we come across opportunities. You know, I'm still very much involved in the sales team. I've got the title Business Development Director to try to help steer the business in the way that we're growing, etc. I'm very much still a contributor. I work with the other sales team members. We're all equal. No one's above each other. There's no egos. It's very much a case of we all get in. So there might be an opportunity come in, and I think amongst us we would say, if it's a security opportunity, should it go to this person because they've got real credibility, they're really good at security, or if it's network and so managed services as an example. But just say an opportunity comes in and it's a Fortinet opportunity. Fortinet's one of the vendors that we work with, and I look at it and essentially it's a big kit list, load of firewalls, loads of part numbers. I don't look at that and go, this is a great opportunity, because the way I look at that, it's probably come in from a procurement manager of some sort. Someone's already done the legwork to it.
They want just maybe benchmarking, do they, or something?
Benchmarking on pricing.
Right.
And then really our only value proposition then is our credibility as a Fortinet partner, which we can tell people till the cows come home. But ultimately that procurement person is going to be looking at price. I've got a kit list, an Excel spreadsheet with 10 items on it. I'm going to send it to 5 partners. And the one who comes back with the cheapest is probably the one that's going to get it, unless there's a very, very strong business case from my head of IT or the technical architect as to why we need to work with this particular company.
So when you get that, what do you actually do? So say, for instance, you get this list come in, you think, well, they're just benchmarking. What do you actually do with that information?
So generally, you ring up the vendor, find out who the vendor salesperson is, who it's aligned to within that vendor, and actually say to them, look, are you aware of this opportunity for Joe Blogs? Oh, yeah. You're the 5th person to speak to me that day. Okay, thanks. I'm not going to waste my time. But then some people maybe...
Would you go back and tell the client that?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'll be open and honest with them and say, look, we'd love to be able to work with you. However, like most vendors, there is a deal registration process in place. The partner that you originally engaged with probably has a price differentiated between us and them. Therefore, if you're looking at commercial pricing, we're not going to be able to compete. However, if you're looking at a service value proposition, managed services, this is what we can do. So if you're looking for someone who's going to be the cheapest, we're not going to be that business. Okay,
so say for instance an opportunity come in, what would get you excited about a lead or an opportunity coming in? How would you know it's potentially a good one?
Again, you have to use your experience to find out, has it been deal registered by someone? If it hasn't been deal registered, you got to understand now, customers are a lot more educated. Generally, when they come into you, they already know what they want to buy. And we talked about this earlier on. If I go and buy a car, I'm a mad petrol head. If I go and buy a car, and then actually the sales guys I work with, we know what car we're going to buy. We don't go to a
the spec, the colour, everything.
We don't go to a BMW dealership and say, I want a BMW X5, or I think I want a 4x4, and then the sales guy spins it and says, yeah, you need an X5 and you want it this colour and you want this spec of engine, you want this colour leather. We already know. And I think consumers and businesses, they know what they want. So you've got to be very, very clever in the way that you position yourself. And you want people to be able to come to you because they see you as the specialist in that area.
In a saturated market of IT, so your Landstam was an IT security reseller, yeah?
Systems integrator. Security was just one of the pillars of the business.
Okay, system integrator.
Yeah.
How would you differentiate yourself from the other dozens of other companies similar to yourselves?
Again, the value proposition comes back to, I think there's always a personality thing as well, the people that you're working with. It's always trying to build a relationship with people. Maybe if we're speaking to someone about a firewall project, they may be speaking to two other people who also are capable of delivering that firewall project, but maybe they are just pure play security players. That's all they do. They don't know networking, they don't know server storage, actually everything behind that firewall that it's going to be protected. And I think that's always been one of the value propositions of LAN to LAN is, yes, we're talking to you about a firewall project, but actually behind that, the reason why you're doing a firewall project is because you're putting virtual servers here for a business application, and we can actually help with you with that whole process and manage that whole estate for you and that infrastructure. So that's one of the key value propositions of working with us.
Okay, so say for instance, a lead comes in, it's from Fortinet, it's the Fortinet opportunity, and it's for Barclays Bank, and then they call you in for the meeting. How do you get that established relationship between start dealing with you and then you land and expand the account? So you actually, it's longevity of the account.
If you've got the credibility to be walked into Barclays Bank, I think if Barclays Bank see you sitting there with the vendor, I think that's quite a big tick in the box for a start.
Isn't there a reluctance for resellers to bring in vendors with them?
I don't think there should be. I think if the vendor has a direct model, you have to qualify that very early on. But we know the vendors that we work with don't have a direct model. People like Fortinet, they're a great channel model, managed very well by they've got an extensive channel team. I would very much lean on the manufacturer, the vendor, to support us in that opportunity. So it's a joint force going into Barclays Bank. So actually, Barclays Bank, the people sitting there go, yeah, we understand what LAN to LAN do, and they've got the back end of the vendor as well, as opposed to us sitting in there in isolation. Which sometimes you are isolated, of course, but then you need to demonstrate your capabilities and where you've done it before, so credibility by association.
Would there ever be an opportunity where the vendor doesn't want to come in with you?
I think if it's a level playing field, if the vendor may have already been in to see that customer and the customer's decided that they're going to buy a certain technology, and then they say, we want 3 partners, can you recommend us 3 partners? Then it's a case of, just take Fortinet as an example, they might say, yeah, it's going to be LAN to LAN, Softcat and BT. And then the opportunity to come to all 3 partners, then it's down to us to demonstrate our capabilities in that area. Credibility by association, to say, look, we understand this is the project you're doing and this is who we've already done it for.
So let's move on with your career. So you took the sales manager's job. What was the biggest challenge of taking that job?
Managing people. Managing people is hard. There's lots of different personalities in teams. The younger people, there's always this, on a Monday morning they call in sick, or on a Friday afternoon they suddenly feel a bit sick. Well, you look outside, it's quite nice and sunny, it's the summer, there's a festival going on. There's all those sort of things to juggle. And it's also trying to help people understand forecasting. So, some people will, on their forecast, they might get an opportunity and they put it at 90% on their forecast. You go, okay, so that's at 90% on your forecast, but when you reverse engineer it, that's what I was trying to do, is where's that opportunity come in? Oh, it came in via blah, blah, blah. Okay. So you haven't actually got a relationship with that customer? No. Okay, but it's at 90% on your forecast. Yeah. Okay. But they came to you with a kit list. Yeah. So there's there not alarm bells there somewhere? How is that 90% on? I'll put that straight back down to like 20%, 25% on your forecast. So and that's just an educational thing. And I think maybe the younger sales guys will learn that over a period of time.
So qualifying out opportunities.
Absolutely.
Within your pipeline.
Yeah.
Okay, so what else is new for you as a sales manager? So it's forecasting. Did you ever have it where, obviously you've got your own customers, did you have it where your sales team would ask you to go out on their customers?
Yes, I have done. Yeah, absolutely. Especially maybe some of the more inexperienced sales guys. Yeah, or help them write a proposal, share with them some documentation that I've created. But I've always been very much in trying to empower people for them to walk in their own shoes as well, as opposed to completely handhold them. And I'm one of these people that I think sometimes you need to jump in at the deep end to learn.
Yeah. So what would you say is the difference between a good salesperson and a great salesperson? You know, someone who wants to aspire to be £1 million biller and someone's just doing 10, 15 grand a month.
They're still a good salesperson. I wouldn't say that someone's a bad salesperson because they're doing 20k. It's very relevant to what they're doing in the industry and what they've been employed to do. We've got people in our business who are 20k salespeople. Doesn't mean that they're 20k per month.
Yeah, and in general in the market that would be good. But what would you say is the difference between being good and being great? You know, those £1 million billers, they're so rare, Kieran. You know, we know we're interviewing people all the time. Yeah. We don't come across £1 million billers. Mm-hmm. It's like unicorns. And I suppose what I'd like to get out of today is I want to make sure that, you know, when the listeners of these shows hear it, they can think, actually, how can I recognise raw talent to be that, you know, that £1 million biller, that sort of, you know, the Ronaldo when he's at 17, 18.
I think it's important not to pigeonhole yourself as well. So try and go into opportunities, not like my dad always said this horse with blinkers approach. You need to be a little bit more open. And actually, you know, we've got 2 eyes and 2 ears. And you need to use them as well. So don't just go in and read off a sales spiel. Listen to what the customer's trying to achieve. And actually, you might be in there talking about a firewall project or a server project, virtualization. But what is the business drivers behind this? Are there other things that you're not picking up? There's lots of sales signs that you're not picking up. And I think that is the difference between a good salesperson and maybe an exceptional salesperson, someone who can maybe find other opportunities out of just an initial opportunity. And I've always said to the sales guys as well, it's working the relationships you've got with your distributors and your manufacturers, and it's not always about what you sell at, it's what you buy at as well. And if you could be clever the way you buy stuff.
And give me an example, how can you be clever?
So it depends what you're selling really, but you know, ultimately sometimes just people take it for a given that you go to a distributor and say, can I have a price for XYZ? And they say, yeah, it's 500 quid. But actually you go back and say, I'm being pushed by my customer on price. You as a distributor are making your margin sat in the middle, but no one actually ever challenges you for discount. But do you have margin in your product or your service? Is there something that you could do to help us win this? And then suddenly there's potentially a discount available, right, which you can maybe pass on to
£400 or whatever it is.
Yeah, exactly. And then suddenly you've made maybe £100 more margin. Yeah. Just being a bit, think outside the box. Do
you think negotiations key in that sort of
Absolutely.
Role to keep on pushing?
Absolutely, and build the relationships with your distributors, because ultimately they want to build their business with you as well. Not everyone wants just the one-hit wonders. We've got hardware vendors and software manufacturers and distributors, hardware distributors that we work with for years, and we work with them as a sort of real close-knit partnership. So if I'm in an opportunity where I'm being squeezed by the customer, maybe some salespeople just think, well, my price is my price. Sometimes they don't even think about challenging their buy price. But this is where you got to think, where some of these massive enterprise customers, the corporate buyers for Marks and Spencers, do you think that they just take the first price that they're given from their manufacturers in Cambodia and Pakistan or wherever, and they say, 10,000 t-shirts, they're £5 each? Do you not think that they negotiate on that price? Of course they do. And that's what they're incentivised to do. And obviously it's more beneficial for them if they're buying it at £3 instead of £5 and selling it to you at 10 when they're making 7.
For you, what is the benefit of working through distribution? Do they provide training, or how does it work and actually making you get
It really depends. There's lots of different distributors out there. So there's lots of these sort of boutique distributors. Some of them bring new innovative technologies to the UK, maybe from Silicon Valley. Some of them actually hold stock. Some of them don't really add any value. They don't hold stock. They don't necessarily have the training, but there may be a credit line for the vendor. And I think it's a vendor.
So would you use a different distributor depending on the deal?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And what would be the decision process on who you
Could be price, could be stock availability. It really depends what we're selling, because obviously what we do as a business, we've got a lot of managed services support, but we do sell a lot of tin. Because ultimately there's all these projects, but there's still tin at the background for this. Yeah. So it's really dependent on the project.
In general, people ask me all the time, sort of saying to me, "Look, Mark, we want to find a book of business candidate. That's the holy grail. We want a candidate who can bring his customers over and hit the ground running." Now, in my opinion, they might be able to transition 30%, maybe, because you've got overlays or people managers on it, etc., helping these deals.
Yeah.
So
I know what you're going to say. I know what you're going to say to me. I think it's very, very difficult to do. Me as a person. Ethics, land-to-land cloud business have been very good to me over the years. I've delivered a lot. I've delivered profit back to the business. It's been a great partnership. Would I leave them as a business and go work through another reseller and then promise that reseller I'm going to take my customers with them? Ethical? No, that's not ethical. I think some people would be blinded to think that their customers are just going to suddenly switch. 20-year relationship with land-to-land, they're suddenly going to switch and go to, another system integrator just because that salesperson.
Do you think the relationship, in the old days, that's a book of business or black book, the relationship went with the sales guy. Do you think it's different now?
Yeah, absolutely.
What's the big differences?
Obviously, litigation is a big risk for a lot of people. A lot of people would be thinking there's the risk of non-compete clauses, etc. But it's also credibility as well. No one wants to be seen, to be leaving a business and then suddenly they're taking all of their customers with them. Why would you do that? If God forbid if something happened to cloud business and there was no cloud business and I had to go out and I'm almost like in the jungle trying to feed myself, then that's different. But they're a business, they're running, they're profitable, they're operational. If I decided to leave, that's my decision. It's not a case of you try and take all your customers with you. If I went to a vendor, that may be different, because then maybe as a vendor I could take those opportunities back to land-to-land or cloud business as a reseller and say, I've got this opportunity with a customer we used to sell to. Would you guys maybe want to come on board as a partner? The channel is vast. There's lots of opportunities out there in the channel. But I think if people are recruiting people on the basis of he's £1 million or a £500,000 GP salesperson, he's going to bring all of his business with him, I think they're absolutely blowing smoke.
Really?
Yeah.
So as a £1 million biller yourself, how would you target customers yourself to think, these are the sort of customers I should be going after?
I think you need to align yourself with the technologies that you're selling. So strategic partnerships. Some of the vendors that we work with maybe work with their channel guys, look at their verticals, how they're being targeted, and go after them together. Maybe seminars, podcasts, LinkedIn, and all that sort of stuff. So there's lots of different avenues to look at.
Yeah. And my last question.
Yeah.
If you were going to give a bit of advice to someone who wanted to make a name for himself as a sales manager, like you have, and you're doing the same role as a contributor, and they want to be £1 million contributor, what would they have to do to make a name for themselves in the channel?
Keep plugging away. Don't give up. You can't get. There will be lots and lots of hurdles along the way. There will be. You'll win deals, you'll lose deals, you'll get really frustrated at times. You think it's not all going right, and then suddenly you'll turn a corner, and then there'll be a bit of light, and it's always 2 steps forward, 1 step back. That's just the industry. No one continuously does this. The fact that I've been successful is over a long period of time and working with a great bunch of guys and a good team around me. It's like anything as well. You got Lionel Messi, who's just won the Ballon d'Or. It's not just because he's a phenomenal striker, but there's a lot of midfielders and defenders that get in the ball to him. And it's very much the same in the business that we work in.
Brilliant. Kieran, you've been a great guest. Thanks so much for your time. Thank you. Cheers. Thanks for joining us and listening to another episode of our Channel Chat podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard and are listening on iTunes, please could you give us a review and subscribe in order to get the newest episodes as soon as they're released. Otherwise, as always, we release an episode every Thursday at midday, so hopefully you can join us then.